Welcome to Let's Talk Early Years. I am your host, Melanie Karim. Today we're talking all things human resource related. In studio with me, the most amazing guests, the HR sisters. We are talking about what really matters in early years settings. People, purpose, and practice. It is going to be jam-packed. It's a two-part series, so stick with me and enjoy. Welcome to the HR Sisters. I am so excited about having you here. I'm so pleased to have actually gotten you to sit here with me this morning, a Friday morning. I know your schedules are packed. So I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful for the information, for the expertise that you're going to be sharing with our early years community specifically. So ladies, who are the HR sisters?
I'll let you go first. She's the elder sister. So out of respect for my elder sister, I let her go first.
So I think HR sisters happened not by design. It happened organically. I started in HR, or rather I always wanted to be in HR since graduation, or even since high school, that the field of HR was introduced to me and I kind of just loved it. So I continued studying and I got into HR, worked in the corporate world, and then suddenly felt like there was a gap in experience of employees and HR in the SME community. And I wanted to, bring that corporate HR, good governance, good practices into that stream. So I started operating on my own, and, I call myself an independent HR consultant. Did that for some time, and then I realized that I couldn't necessarily serve the entire SME community on my own. Mm-hmm. And Desma here was having her own life experience and was on the sidelines just waiting for, I think I manifested Desma joining, and us joining forces. And gradually we started, working with the brand that I had created and trying to build that. But it suddenly happened that we are sisters. We both have HR. And from D'Souza sisters, it suddenly evolved into the HR sisters because we both have HR experience.
Right.
And it was just like, why didn't we think of this?
Organic.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it was absolutely organic. I think the HR sisters existed long before we gave it an identity.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think that identity came, late last year. And when it came, we were like, oh my God, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
And here it is,
Yeah.
and it's doing amazingly well. I am so privileged to be able to glean from all of your expertise on your podcast, on your little bites that you put out every week. Tell us about that as well.
You're very kind.
I'm just trying to soak all that
I'm like, oh my God.
appreciation in before I can respond. I'm like, oh, that's so validating and so it feels good because, like I told you, I started with the intent of bringing good practice HR and knowledge and not gatekeeping to this SME community that I call, which includes early years and every other founder, owner, entrepreneur that's, the 90% of Dubai's economy.
Yes.
Trying to bring good practice HR accessible and, which ultimately helps employees and their families. So there's like that whole social aspect to it as well.
I love that. I love that.
And when you say like this is what we're doing is it's full circle in a way. Like it feels like we're finally doing that and bringing that to life.
Well, I'm glad that I can shed a light on what you're doing because this is what calls my heart. Being in early years is about serving other communities and serving people, right? The validation, yes, it's always needed. But when you speak about branding, it's really about what is the value. And that is why you're successful. What is the value you're bringing to the market? And you're bringing a tremendous amount of value.
Wow.
And we're speaking about as a business, but I'm also speaking about, like I'm saying, the podcast and the bites that you're putting, your Instagram page, that's free information for anyone who cares to listen. It's right there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you say that, right? And it feels like what the intent behind everything that we put out is, being reflected back to us.
Girl,
And
she said it.
Yeah.
and when we sort of started the business and we would talk about, how do we market ourselves and how do we share the knowledge and things like that, a lot of the advice we got was, you have to sensationalize things. So you have to tell people, if you don't do this, this is what could happen. And I guess this is a lot of the narrative around HR, right? If you don't, then this is the consequence.
Right.
And we didn't want to come from that angle, because
Right.
you shouldn't have sound HR practices for fear of, being reprimanded. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. So we said, we don't want to scare people, we want to share knowledge.
Yes.
And that's the angle we came
Yes.
from. So if you look at everything we put out, you would never see anything to say, if you don't, this is the consequence.
Right.
It's more from actually, if you do, these are all of the good things.
These are
that
the
would-
benefits.
Exactly.
So you're bringing a positive aspect to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I wanna say to you, why do you think then for early years, and I think it's something that's overlooked in early years, why do you think it's so important as a starting point? Why is HR practice so important for early years education?
So I'd say the word early years, right, tells you that you're forming something in the early years.
Right.
You are informing, almost setting the foundation for a child's life in the early years. So what you have to make sure you get right is that foundation should be right.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, this is when you have sound HR practices to make sure that the people, the team that is providing this foundation to these children
Yeah.
have a solid foundation
Yeah.
for themselves
Yeah.
to begin with. And so it's very important then to have that so that they can all operate from a place of clarity, connection, and then they can provide that early education to these lovely children,
Right.
who and shape their lives from a place of I love coming to work. I know I'm valued at work. I know I'm heard at work.
You're speaking to culture. You're
Correct.
speaking that HR actually informs the culture of the nursery
Absolutely.
school. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's in the absence of having structure, you have chaos.
Absolutely.
And that's what translates to the children.
Yes.
Yeah. And moreover, the children, also the parents. Because the children are, they might be absorbing, but they're not necessarily able to communicate back what they're feeling all the time. And they probably do in their own ways. But parents sense the chaos because it impacts how they interact with the school, how they recommend. So if I look at it from a point of view of like, how do you see that particular institution positioned itself for being the nursery of choice in that region? What would differentiate is where somebody can sense and feel the culture as they step in. It's like the vibe that you get, right?
Yes.
In terms of foundation as well, like it's where the first experience comes. So if you don't have that strong roots in grounded, HR provides those roots to these employees that flourish. When they flourish, you have a beautiful garden or a beautiful forest where children enjoy
I love
the play.
that analogy. So what is that?
Philosophical.
Yeah, I love that. So what is good HR practice going to look like in establishing our culture in the nursery school? I mean, this is a mouthful, and we've got time.
Yeah.
We're going to do two parts here. So help us step by step. How are we going to grow this culture? How are we going to, also with the understanding that a lot of nursery school settings don't necessarily have an HR department. So you've got a manager and an administrator, come receptionist perhaps, and a deputy manager, and they tasked with the HR function as well. In the bigger groups, of course, they've got a whole HR section, but I'm speaking specifically to how are we going to grow this culture of good HR practice?
So, I'd sum up good HR practice in 2 words: clarity and culture. When anyone interacts with the nursery, they should, and regardless of whether you are the manager, you're a parent, or you're a child, everyone should feel like, look, we're all on the same page. And that stems from clarity.
Right.
Now, what does that mean in terms of tangibles, right? That means that you are very clear, you have a very clear employment contract with your team. You have very clear policies and procedures. You have a very welcoming onboarding experience. You are investing in development. And when I say investing, I don't mean a lot of expensive external learning. There's a lot that you can do with small budgets as well.
Right.
When you have clarity across these different, elements, what you bring is then you create a culture where everyone is working from the same, singing from the same song sheet as
Exactly,
they sing, right?
exactly.
And I know we have 2 episodes, but if I had to summarize, if you can get to a point where if anyone asks you a question on something and you're like, yep, this is how we do it, you have a very clear foundation.
Right. So speaking to that, what are the non-negotiables?
I think in addition to what she has said in terms of forming, I think every role should have a clear job description.
Right.
To say what is my work versus what is the other person's work.
Yes.
That way you get clarity on what you're working under and within, and you also understand how you're contributing and where you're adding value.
Right. So
And
we're not stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
it's clarity.
I've heard from people in the management that they're not able to clearly articulate who does what.
Right.
Because they're all teachers or they're all teaching assistants, but each of them have their own little space to work within. So that clarity with job description, not just on paper, but actually familiarizing them
Right.
through a proper onboarding and setting the right expectations
Right.
will really go a long way in terms of not just having a great workforce while they're working, but also from a retention point of view, because they know what they're doing and how they contribute, and also what else they can do.
Right. Now, onboarding sounds like a big word. It sounds like something corporate, and again, we're early years educators, managers, leaders. What does successful onboarding look like? So I want to speak to 2 things.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year, when we're onboarding a whole team, and then throughout the year, when we're onboarding perhaps one person, maybe a locum staff or a new staff member, is it different? But what does it look like?
So onboarding has to be a welcoming experience, not a checklist.
Okay.
And I think what happens is, because everyone's focused on the parents and the children, especially in early years, you tend to think that or assume that this is a teacher is a teacher, they've come and we want them to hit the ground running.
Yes.
So you give them the essentials to be able to do their job.
Right.
But that could be any nursery. Like, what makes it you? What makes it yours? So spending that time in making or creating that welcoming experience for your team allows them also then to create, to sort of give that experience to the children.
Right.
So successful onboarding doesn't have to happen in one day.
Right.
That's not necessarily
Right.
successful onboarding. What you have to create is a bit of a program. And a program is something that can happen over 1 week, and then a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day. Essentially, maybe like have a 100-day plan that you don't necessarily have to do something every single day,
Right.
but you give the person this much time to settle into the organization and keep going back to the employee to say, do you have this? Are you now familiar with this? Do you know how to do this? And so once they have that bite-sized process where they are able to absorb that information in a way that makes their experience of working in a place easier, simple, and it allows them to breathe as well,
Yes,
right? You don't want to
yes.
just give them an employee handbook and
Yes.
say, here's everything,
Right.
this is how we do business, this is how we work here. And the analogy I always use is, if you think of hospitality, right? And if you think of you're going on a holiday, and you go to, let's say, the reception desk, it's the day of your holiday, and you arrive at the hotel, and the reception desk is like, oh yeah, yes, I knew you were coming, have a seat, and we're working on your room. and you're like, okay, you knew I was coming, and then they take you to the room, and then they're like clearing things away, and they're like, oh yeah, this is this, and you can clearly see that the person who's welcoming you hasn't put any thought into it.
Yes.
So automatically, do you think that someone's going to enjoy that experience? Probably not.
Probably not, and they're not going to feel valued.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you compare that to an experience where you just walk in and they're like, hi, Melanie, welcome. We were expecting you. Your room is ready. Here's where, maybe you can have a cup of coffee in our cafe while we take your luggage up to your room.
Yes.
And, once you get there, even like a plate of fruit, something that makes it like, oh, they've thought of me,
Right.
And so it's that experience. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be thoughtful and clear.
I love that you've almost made it doable. In fact, you have. You've made it doable, because I think in the back of our minds, we're really thinking about, do we have this employee handbook, the staff handbook, the parent handbook, the teacher handbook, the classroom guide, and we've got that for the first day, and we've got inset training, and it's safeguarding, and we need you to check your class and set up, and it's August the 26th, and we're opening the doors on the 20th. So you're right, it can feel overwhelming.
Checklist, right?
Yes, and like I have to get all of this done.
Yeah.
For the value and the purpose of welcoming the parents and the children. And in that space, our educators are not feeling valued and seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So documents that I need to be having for an onboarding, a job description.
A job description.
Right.
We call it like a welcome pack or a contract pack. So you can determine what that welcome pack can have.
Right.
So it can have a little bit about your school, your vision, something that the owner or the founder puts in words, what their thoughts are, so they can receive. And also, like, onboarding doesn't start on the day they start, right? It starts from, let's say, the time you've recruited them, they've signed an offer, to the point that they join is all part of onboarding too. So there is a pre-onboarding and a post-onboarding, if onboarding is the actual day of start, right? So there's a lot of prep work that you can do in preparation of them starting, if you have organized your program accordingly. So you can send them information in advance. We're excited to have you have a look at our website, see what you like about it, or here's your what to do when you come on the first day of work, what to expect, how to dress, because every school has different rules. Send them the t-shirt early, take their sizes if you have a uniform. All of those things can be done even before they start, at the same time as you do the visa and the work permit, because that feels very transactional, and it's necessary because this is the rules of the land. But you can soften it with all the other aspects of onboarding, so it's not overwhelming when they show up that you have to give them more than walk them through it. So you can't you can save a lot of time if you do a lot of that work before. The same as like building the nursery or the classroom before the children arrive, right? You don't have an empty classroom and the children arrive and then gradually things come into that. It doesn't work like that either. So you do all that prep so that day one they come, there's a full-fledged classroom for them to operate in. It's the same way. You can do that for the teachers as well.
I thought of something, and I've shared this example before, but I will share it here. I think it's a wonderful example, right? When the parent is dropping the child for the first time to a new school, there's a lot of nerves around it, right? But the parent walks in with the child and then makes sure that the child is comfortable, because they're going into a new environment where everything is new, and they don't want them to feel overwhelmed, and they want them to feel comfortable. And then, they do that for a couple of days, and then within a few weeks, the child has made friends and they're just happy to walk in.
They've settled.
They've settled, right? It's exactly the same thing for a new employee. When they walk into a new environment, it's new. So even something as simple as, here's where you can park your car, and then I will meet you at the entrance, for instance, like meet me at here. And then because now you're a familiar face, because most likely you've been part of the interview process, or there has been some communication.
Right.
So there's some familiarity.
Yes.
So now to meet that person, to say, hey, welcome, I'm glad we're finally here, let's walk in together. Just that, it's exactly the same thing as a parent taking a child in. You feel safe and you feel looked after.
Yeah,
And that
I
makes-
really hear your heart. I can even see your emotions on your face and how invested you are in really us seeing these people,
Yeah.
these educators coming in to join our nursery schools. I feel your positive energy just in you saying that they should be seen and they should be valued even before they've started contributing
Absolutely.
as employees in the business. And this, I think, is foundational in creating a culture of collaboration and appreciation and gratitude and just value.
Yeah.
You know, that it's not just, as you were saying, it's not just transactional. No, you belong here with us and we want to work together. It's not just this employer-employee relationship and please do your job and can you go home at 5 o'clock and we call it a day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
And everybody, ask anyone, right, and any employment will always remember their first week or their first 2 weeks in a new job. You know, and it's either bittersweet or it's full of good memories.
Yes.
And they may not remember their performance conversations or something that happened throughout the year, but that onboarding experience sticks. And if it is a good one, it's something they talk about to everybody else when they go. And that also, from a different point of view, right? They're elevating the employer brand, but they're also elevating the nursery's brand.
Yeah.
And that attracts other students and other children into
And
that.
other talent as well.
And
You know,
yes.
other people want to work at the nursery.
Yes.
That's one thing. And the other thing is also, if you're not perfect, a lot of flaws kind of get forgiven because a person's like, okay, you know, it's fine. I'll overlook this because now they feel like they're part of it. So they're not, if nothing's done to them, they're part of what's being offered.
They become invested in the vision and the
Correct.
values of the organization.
And you know, to your point about everybody remembers their first day of onboarding, I think that applies to life in general, right? We all remember the first time we did something.
Correct.
Whether it's the first time you traveled or the first time you, you know, ate something that was delicious, or the first time you didn't as well. You know, those are core memories. So like if you're able to influence that core memory, like you're starting on the right foot.
I love that.
Yeah.
We want that.
Yeah.
We want that in our nursery schools.
I feel like over here, right, when we have talent joining us, we always have the benefit of having talent with experience because we're all expats. We come from overseas and we bring experience to this economy. So there's also an assumption that with the experience, they know how to start.
Right.
They probably do know how to do their
Right.
job, but they don't know how to do their job within this environment.
Yes, in this specific
In
place,
this
with your specific
place,
values.
your
with
exactly.
Yeah.
So they bring a set of skills, they bring a set of knowledge and experience, but how to integrate that into your environment, that's the onboarding success.
Right.
And that's the environment you have to create for them to be able to do that.
Right.
And I think, like, you know, great work can happen and you'll see a difference in the experience of the parents and the children, because
Right.
they all have, like you said, right, when they're bringing children, they are nervous and they're waiting to see whether they made their right choice, because they're also worried, like, are they being good parents? Have I made the right choice with this nursery, or should I have done that nursery? And you know, so you're in their minds, this is like a big decision they've made for their child.
Yes.
So
and I'm
if-
hearing you say it's the same for our prospective staff members.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They could have gone anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, we just shot an episode. I think last month we did an episode with one of our past clients, and they were not a nursery, but they were a business, and we worked with them for about 6 to 8 months to set up their entire HR foundation, and they were looking to scale, etc. And although we did a lot of work with them, Michael said the most impactful thing we created was onboarding.
Wow.
And now, you know, when they started working with us, they were about 60 employees and they had 2 clinics. They're sports clinic,
Yeah.
they now have 5 and they have 100, they've doubled in size, and they're able to do that because they have these things in place.
Yes.
And they said retention is not an issue for them anymore,
Yeah.
and recruitment is not an issue for them anymore because people want to work there.
Yeah.
And that was just, if you want to know that what you have done has created impact, like hearing that for us was
Absolutely.
just was like, that's it.
Yes.
That's why
We've
you're
done
doing
our job.
Yeah, we've done our job.
Yeah,
Exactly.
halas. So you're speaking about recruitment. So before we even get to onboarding,
Yes.
recruitment.
Yeah.
I spoke to you briefly before we started rolling on camera.
Yeah.
I am finding in the landscape of early years in the 7 Emirates, we're recruiting from the same pool of early years educators across the board. I attended a conference last month, and the owner of a very well-established parent app spoke in detail and in length about how to use AI, in the early years. But one point that he touched on briefly stood out for me in his conversation. And what he said was he can see, using data, using AI, through the app, the same people in different nurseries logging on year in and year out. And it's such a quick movement of staff between our nursery schools, and we're feeling that as leaders, as managers. We're feeling that. You no sooner have you recruited your talent, then the next person resigns and moves to the next nursery school. And so, what does, I want to say, successful, for want of a better word, but what does a great recruitment process look like for early years educators?
I think the question more, so we can go into what does a great recruitment process look like, right? But given the stat of the data this person has from the app, I'd change the question slightly to look at something different. Is what does the exit information tell you? So if a person, or if you're seeing the same educators moving around, are they being asked at the end when they're leaving, why they're leaving to begin with?
You're speaking about an exit interview.
An exit interview,
Yeah.
exactly. That exit interview will tell you what has not been working.
Yeah.
And it may not be just the recruitment process itself. It can be so many other things. So by addressing simply the recruitment process and not addressing everything else, you can still lose the employee.
Right.
So it has to be looked at holistically.
Yes.
Right? So this
Yes.
is number one. Also, earlier when we were speaking, we spoke about how a lot of early years nurseries don't have HR, or they don't have HR foundations. That in itself is very telling, to say if you don't have the right systems and frameworks in place to look after people who are, first of all, about 60% of your operating expenses as well. And if you don't have the right processes and the right things to look after them, then that, I can tell you straight away, there's a few things that are amiss over there. Now, does that mean everybody has to have an HR department? No, it doesn't.
That's good news.
Yeah, it doesn't. But what it does mean is that you should invest in having an HR foundation. And I'm consciously using the word invest because a lot of companies, and maybe earlier is the same, they look at it as a cost, not an investment. But if you think of the leaky bucket and how many people are falling through that bucket and leaving within a few months of being employed, you're spending on recruiting, you're spending on visas, you're spending on all of these things. And you're spending, over and over again. If you then just invest some amount in trying to figure out why they're leaving and fix it, you might not just have that problem, not just in year one, but for years to come.
Right.
Right.
There's so many things I want to speak to you about. My goodness. So what would the exit interview look like? What sort of questions are we asking? What is it going to look like? How are we bringing this person? If this person's resigned already, 9 out of 10 times they're not really willing to come into an exit interview, or they're coming and they're already unhappy, and so they're full of fuel and fire. So what is a successful exit interview going to look like for
Yeah.
us?
You're right in saying that an exit interview might not bring back the person exiting, right?
Right.
Because the information you get from exit interviews in HR terms, we call it like lagging indicators. So
Right.
it's what has already happened that you're able to grasp. But what you should do with that information that you learn is how you're going to apply it to your existing team. So that leaky bucket is like kind of sealed. So you use that information to inform what your HR initiatives or HR efforts are going to be to avoid such issues. And we have an example with a client where two of their members resigned at the same time to join another clinic, and it is also common in the healthcare industry because there's so many new clinics. So
Yeah.
attraction from the current industry is convenient because they've got the license, they've got all of that, so it's pretty much ready made in a way. So they didn't know what to do with this, right? So when they spoke to this people, they're like, I don't know, there's no systems, there's no structure. The other company, yes, it's not much more money, and this they were openly sharing. It's like, but I don't know how my career works and so on and so forth.
Right.
So what they said is, look, we're working on this system, and like, can you give us some time? It's like, well, I'm already in my notice. Like, they had almost signed off by saying nothing's going to change.
Right.
And then started the comms where we put out on their screens, and on that there's a performance management system coming, and it just so happened to be in parallel, right? And they rescinded their resignations.
Wow.
Because they saw that there's not just words, but there's actual action that
Yes.
has happened with
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And those two rescinded the resignation and just said, look, this is what we were looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
They didn't know how to say it.
a clear
as an
career
employee.
trajectory, clear processes within the organization, yeah?
I think I want to add two more things to that, right? So we're talking about exit interview, but signs of disengagement and withdrawal start way before
Correct.
the exit interview itself.
Yes.
This is number one, right?
Yeah.
So you can visibly see,
Yeah.
if you're looking, that someone is on the verge of looking withdrawn, maybe absenteeism. There's something going on, but we just automatically tend to say like, oh, her absenteeism is terrible. But
Yeah.
has anyone sat down and said, like, what's going on? You know,
Right.
you were great. And you can almost even go back to say, like, we had such a wonderful the entire experience of bringing you on board was amazing, and you were doing such a good job, and something has happened, and what is it?
Yeah.
And maybe that's your opportunity to actually save them before they even go down that path of you meeting them at the exit interview.
Right.
That's number one. The second thing is, from experience, people don't only leave for salary. There's usually much
True.
more than that, that's going on
Yeah.
there. And again, we tend to think this is HR, and these behaviors are exclusive to the workplace, right? But if you think of human behavior, if you're spending money on something and you're not getting you might be spending, let's say, 10 dirhams on something, right? And you're not getting the experience somewhere, and if you see somewhere else, you're willing to even pay 12, but the experience is better.
Yes.
So suddenly it's not just about the numeric value, it's about the experience.
Yes.
And it's the same principle
Absolutely.
that would come
Absolutely.
apply in your work.
Absolutely. I always say we spend the better part of our lives at work.
Exactly.
The better part of our day, the better part of our week is spent at work. It needs to be a valuable and a joyful experience, and it starts with good HR practices.
Yeah.
I mean, just to add to Desma's point about like how early detection prevents somebody from leaving, it's the same like if you look at children, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start to see they're bubbly, energetic, active, and doing stuff, and suddenly they become withdrawn or they get quiet. So they're silent, but they're not saying much, but they're telling a lot. And the same thing happens with employees as well. Like, they start being withdrawn, they start doing the bare minimum. There's a term for that nowadays, it's called quiet quitting.
Yes, I've heard it.
And they do the bare, they'll show up, but they're not fully engaged. And you can detect, but if you are as as a person so engaged in the day-to-day activities of managing activities, you'll miss these signs.
Yes.
You have to be vigilant,
Present.
observant,
You
and
have to be
present for your
present.
own organization. Even if you're an owner, if you're coming, visiting the nursery, doing the rounds, talking to people, have these thoughts in your mind, like, am I seeing what are they saying what they think I should hear, or what am I detecting? Like, see how the interaction is. And there are lots of signs, and you'll always, when this person leaves, in hindsight, oh yeah, I thought, I saw, I did, you'll go back, but it's a point of maybe,
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, now that makes
You
sense.
must
This
take-
was,
yes.
remember when this happened, and then you joined the dots.
Yeah.
But you know that, this actually, like, your gut tells you that something's
Yeah,
not right here.
Right.
This person's not behaving like
especially
that.
especially when you are, this has happened a few times, then you should also check, like, what can I do to prevent this, because you cannot necessarily influence a competitor trying to look at your talent, but you can do something to make the employees be less inclined to be
Looking at it.
To looking,
at a
yes,
competitor, you know?
yes,
So
yes.
that you have that that's internal to your organization
Right.
to control.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, again, we don't wait until someone is exhibiting these signs to then go see, oh, like, what do we do about it, right? Because you're you're almost on the back foot to begin with.
Yeah.
Have something in place throughout the year to make sure that you're already having these initiatives. And again, they don't have to be grand or
So
extravagant.
what are some of those
So,
experiences?
for instance, right, you can have weekly huddles,
Right.
monthly huddles. Use that as an opportunity to recognize someone,
Right.
to appreciate someone. That's number one. You can have micro learning sessions where you like assign some reading maybe, or like watch something together and then have a discussion around it. You can pair people up, like junior staff with the more senior staff, and promote their learning. And none of this costs you money.
Yes.
These
Yes.
are, you just have to be creative around how you engage the team, that's outside of like spending to send them for like a team building event, for
Or
instance.
external training.
You
I
don't-
hear
it's-
you.
It's not, people think like, oh, training means it needs to be external, and
Yeah.
it needs to be this, like, they have a block around what that training looks like.
Yeah.
But there are ways to do it,
Yes.
within the workplace itself.
And I find that the on-the-job training is such a phenomenal opportunity for bonding with your team members,
Yeah.
particularly from a leadership perspective. I have found in my experience, when I actually got down in the classroom from a place of, as opposed to a place of, you need to fix that, to a place of, can I show you?
Yeah.
Can I? Or just walked in and started attempted doing it, and then quietly left again, and afterwards said to the teacher, did you see what I did there? Do you
Yeah.
think that, so it's an opportunity for them to connect with you and to feel seen, and to feel that, what, this leader or this manager is looking at my work from a place of not critique, but a place of helpfulness and collaboration. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
those practices, as you're saying, daily, monthly, weekly,
Yeah.
adds to an enhanced experience in building a culture where HR is not perceived as the unfriendly place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even like if you have a teacher or teaching assistant or someone who's done something that is very beneficial, not just to say great job, but like, actually, would you now show the rest of us
Yes.
like how we can do the same thing?
Yes.
Because that's great. And so like the joy of knowing that you're not just recognized, like you're so good that we want you to share that with everyone.
Yes, with
like,
your colleagues.
correct.
Yes.
It makes you also feel very
Well,
special.
it's that validation and that self-confidence, right?
Yeah.
And that confidence in actually your ability to do your work.
Yeah,
and we're shining a
absolutely.
light on
Yeah.
that. So
It's like you tell the children, you have show and tell. Like even teachers and educators can have show and tells.
I
like
love
where they
that.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you do for children that can be turned around and done in the environment of educators too.
Yes.
And the other thing is, like you said, 70% of learning is on the job learning. That's where careers develop. It's the 30% that is classroom based or any other way of learning. But how you manage that 70% through these sort of initiatives is where that gets enriched.
Yeah.
And that's where the value comes in.
Yeah.
So a lot of development and a lot of attention to enhancing somebody's career is on the job, but it's still a little structure needs to be applied to it.
Yes.
Because as I said, like, we do get the talent that we get is already experienced, so we have the opportunity to bring that experience and grow this economy, but we have to also contribute to enrich that experience as it grows. It's not just that at the start that they bring, we need to also add to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to go back before we close. I want to go back to recruitment. How do I look beyond the CV? Because my inbox as a nursery manager is flooded with CVs. How do I, and again, I don't necessarily have the backing of an HR who can screen the CVs. How do I now, after I've screened them, I've narrowed it down to they've got the necessary skills that I require, they've got the necessary experience that I require. How do I look beyond the CV?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And I'd almost ask a question back to say, what do you want to look for beyond the CV? Is it attitude? Is it mindset? Is it like identify what you're looking for that is beyond the CV? Once you're aware of what you're looking for, then you can figure out how to look for it. So a lot of interviewers, and this happens everywhere, is they look for sameness. I have a good feeling about this person. Yes, you have all the technical skills, but I feel good about you. And a lot of times that can be a bias because that person's similar to you.
Yes.
And that's not an objective way of looking.
Yes.
You need diversity
Right.
in experiences, but also in types of people.
I want to say, you're also saying that perhaps if we can, there should be two of us in the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. There should be two people. And usually that's why you have HR in the room as part of that interview process, or HR is part of that process.
And it's objective.
It's objective,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so once you identify to say, like, for instance, I want to look for mindset, right? What questions can you ask them that would allow you to deduce what their mindset is like? And I'll give you an example of something that we did with our business. So when we started the business 5 years ago, it was during COVID. Great time to start a business, right? Very brave. But it was during COVID, and that's the hand we were dealt with, right? And of course, at that time, there was lots of people looking for jobs, which meant that there were lots of people coming to us to say, hey, you've started a new consultancy, I'd like to apply.
Right.
So at the time, we thought that we wanted to work with people who thought differently and who didn't just copy paste HR from the experience to say, here's the policy, here's this. It's not like, we wanted people who would bring it to life.
Right.
That's one thing, but we also wanted people who would care.
Yes.
Care about the client, care about us, care about the quality of work that we're putting out, right? So what did we do? We asked for potential interest to not just send us a CV, but to send us like a 30-second clip or a 1-minute clip of introducing themselves and why they think they would be a good fit to work with us. Now, did we actually care about the quality of the video or what they were saying? No, actually not really. We just wanted to see if they had it in them to go outside of their comfort zone to take a video of themselves, because that's not easy to do, right? You have to think about it. There has to be a little preparation, and you have to present yourself in such a way. And so eventually the folks that we did work with are people that did exactly that. And we continue to work with them 5 years later. And interestingly, we had a consultant who came to us, and we knew straight away that we wanted to work with her, because we just, she just knocked it out of the park. But at the time, it wasn't the right time for us to recruit. And so we told her this, and she was like, that's fine. I just want to work with you.
Right.
And it was taking us time. And in the meantime, there was an opportunity for her to be an HR business partner in one of our clients. And they were an amazing client as well. So of course, we went to her to say, look, there's this opportunity and it's here. And, we would like to put you through because we think you'd be a great fit. And she said, no, I'm going to wait to work with
Wow.
you. Remember?
Wow.
Yeah.
And we were just like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So humbled.
Yeah, we were very
Yeah,
humbled,
yeah.
exactly. Now, of course, we're not trying to kind of blow smoke up our own. We're just saying that you also have to think of, what you're looking for. So we identified that we wanted people that were willing to think outside the box.
Yes. You've given us so many nuggets there. You've given, for me, my takeaway from that is, before I even recruit someone, to look at what are the values of
Absolutely.
the organization, and that the actual interview is not a checklist.
Correct.
We might be going on to ChatGPT or LinkedIn or Google looking for 10 interview questions for an early years educator. And that is not the way to go. That actually I need to personalize this and spend the time, invest the time, as you've said, invest the time to look at what my values are and create the questions that answer my values, that answer my culture. That is so valuable. That is so helpful. Again, it's so simple.
Exactly.
But you've broken it down into an actual digestible do for me as a manager.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the thing about recruitment, right? It's an investment. It's not a process that you do and you get an input and an outcome.
And it's not an interrogation.
Yeah, neither is
Again,
it an interrogation.
yes,
Exactly. So the
yes.
questions have to be where you're trying to see what value that person brings to you, not whether they are the right or the wrong, or their answer is correct or the wrong, the interrogation. So making that candidate experience positive goes a long way into even the employment for the right candidate.
Right.
Because if you value them as a candidate, they'll just imagine how they'll be valued as an employee. So the buy-in starts very early.
Yes.
And the candidate experience is where you give the candidate the opportunity, make them feel comfortable. It's not about like a nervous interview. You should make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And very often I also tell, take the time, even if you feel like it didn't start off well, because nobody comes comfortable to do interviews.
Yeah,
Like,
without
it's
the
not-
jitters. We all do,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
We all are never ready to
Yes.
be interviewed. We
Yes.
can interview people. That also has its little sense of jitters, because
Yes.
you are also equally invested in the outcome.
Yes.
But as an interviewee, it's far more greater because you're on the other side receiving the question. So making them comfortable, being on time. If you tell them to come at a certain time, you also need to show up.
Yes.
You need to be respectful of their time, because they're
Absolutely.
working somewhere, coming to take your time to you. So all of these things, when you draw out the values, this is the experience you need to add to that.
Yeah.
That will make the recruitment a far more successful outcome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way street,
Yeah.
right?
That's true.
You are looking for good talent, but you're also telling them in a way to say, hey, come work with us, because
Yes,
we're amazing.
yes.
And going back to your earlier point about everybody's trying to recruit from the same pool, how do you make yourself stand out?
How do we?
It's exactly that.
Yes.
Give that experience.
Yes.
So someone says, hey, yeah, I remember interviewing with this place and they were amazing. I would love to work there.
Yes.
That's how you make yourself the preferred choice.
Right.
Because there is a war on talent.
Yeah.
And when it's like being in a relationship, right? You want to be the person that you want the person to choose.
Yes.
And it's exactly the same thing.
It actually is. It actually is. Ladies, we're going to close this episode. And so before we do, for anybody who's only going to grab this first episode, where are we going to find you? How do we find you? How do organizations, earlier settings, schools, small businesses, how do we connect with you? How do we glean from your wisdom as well? Share with us.
So you can find us on all over social media.
Mm-hmm.
We have a podcast of ourselves called the HR Sisters Podcast.
I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. And we stream on YouTube. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we share like bites of information that you can sort of implement straight away in your business. So this is number one. If you want us to help you in your business, then you can reach out to us through our website, which is www.snksugarnancykilo.ae, and book a consultation straight off the website. And yeah, that's, you can get direct access to us
I love
straight
that.
away.
Accessible. The
Always.
HR sisters. I love that. Ladies, thank you for our first episode. Next episode coming up.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a phenomenal first episode in our two-part series with the amazing HR sisters, reminding us that onboarding, staff retention is really about how we value the people who take care of the little people. I'm looking forward to welcoming you to the second part of this series. This is Let's Talk Early Years, and I'll see you next time.